Welcome to the Killer Psychologist. Today, we're going to find out if I'm a killer. And if so, what would be my motive? And who do you think I would be most likely to kill? So it's come to my attention that there is a group of people that have, shall we say, made an accusation that I'm involved in a conspiracy for murder for hire. And so this was just brought to my attention by Eric Zelaya. And I would love for him to tell us how he came to receive this information and explain this to me, Eric. And also, Craig, thank you for coming. You are now my attorney in this case, and I will be having you weigh in on your legal knowledge because I may need to retain you here.
So just as to preface this, let's make sure that we know that there's no confidentiality in this. If there's a legal relationship between you and I, then by virtue of being on the podcast, that our discussions are not privileged. So let's just get that out there first, which, that's fine. Because as long as you are okay with it, I'm fine.
All right. So you're going to be my attorney?
Sure. I'll be your attorney. And then just make sure we understand that whatever we talk about here, there's a waiver of privilege, meaning anything that I talk about, not privileged.
Can she pull a Saul Goodman and, she'll give you $1 and then she's officially retained you. And then we can say, hey, look, I saw it, witnessed it, $1.
Believe it or not, you actually don't even need that to establish a attorney-client relationship. The expectation on the part of the person who thinks they're being, represented is all that's needed as long as it's reasonable.
Craig, I still want to Venmo you $1, but
just $1 though.
$1,
no more.
You. That's the routine.
No more.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that I'm glad Dana's gonna waive confidentiality and waive her Fifth Amendment right here to not incriminate herself in and we shouldn't be laughing. I mean, Dana,
I know
you're being accused of homicide. And not only
we'll
that,
talk about that for sure, about what happens to people that make false allegations. But yeah, go ahead. Yeah, that's
not only that, Dana, but not only are you being accused of a homicide, you're being accused of potentially setting up an entire potential murder, staging phone calls to 911, and as of this morning, the newest information that came out is that you're supposedly now in South Carolina running rampant with somebody who is not a person of interest in this case, but everybody believes they might be. But that's just how crazy social media has become. And I'm super excited to talk about it. And yeah, this is going to be great.
No one could.
Where do we even begin?
Surprised. No one could be more surprised than me. So tell me, what am I doing in North Carolina? Or what am I alleged to be doing in North Carolina? Or South Carolina?
Well,
I'm sorry, I don't know where I'm at.
If you're in North Carolina, you're probably in a boat.
You're probably, yeah. If you're in Georgia, you're probably breathing chlorine gas right now because they had an explosion. But supposedly in South Carolina, you're running around with an individual's husband. This person's husband, his wife passed away, and they're the subject of what was a case that was talked about on social media. And you guys might remember the Mica Miller investigation. Now, I'm not going to give any names of who's involved with all this stuff, but this is where all of that started from. And Dana, the Mica Miller case, were you ever involved with that case, and what in any capacity?
So we did a podcast, episode 21, I believe, and Eric Zelaya came. He was a guest on the show at that time, and you basically recapped that investigation. You had been consulting with Mica Miller's father about the case, and you were investigating it, and I invited you to come on to the show and tell us the outcome of the investigation. And so from my understanding, I interviewed you, so people can go back and listen to that episode. So that was really the first time it had been brought to my attention. And I had listened to the 911 call of Mica Miller, or alleged 911 call, because now they believe it was fake, or that I staged a 911 call is what they're saying.
Oh yeah, we'll get into it. It gets crazy.
So a 911 call, Mica Miller essentially going into the woods, and she calls to say that she's going to kill herself, and that the reason why she's making the call is so they can find her body. So I have to admit, when I first heard it, I thought it was, it is unusual, and I didn't know where the tape had come from, right? Or this is all new. I don't know this person at all. I don't know anything about her. I'm not retained in the case. I'm not familiar with the case. And obviously, if I was an actual forensic psychologist appointed by the court, like, I could never speak of this case. Of course, that would violate confidentiality. So I'm not involved in the case. But Eric Zelaya was. We had an agreement with the family, and
Well, we had a permission. I'll say permission. There was no contractual agreement. That was a big issue as well. So people were like, "Oh, why are you talking about the case?" Well, I didn't have I just like, "Hey, look, I can help pro bono. Let's help pro bono. That's what we do." There was no agreement because they weren't going to retain me. They didn't want to retain anybody. They're like, "Hey, look, we don't mind if you poke around though," and that's kind of what we did, and that's exactly what we did.
yeah. And so people don't understand, all of us are licensed, and we have many cases that we work on professionally as real people. This isn't just true crime. We're just not out on social media. I have a business, I have cases, and I can never talk about any of those. They're all confidential, and I could never even make a comment. Sometimes it's published in the paper or within media, my name attached to a case, and so then people have that knowledge, but I can never tell you anything more than that. Recently in the news, I found out I was in the news associated with, somebody that was being charged with murder, and that I was appointed to evaluate them. And that's it. I can't tell you the outcome of that or anything. Although a lot of it is public record if someone wanted to pull a file and see if I was appointed. But I think the problem here is, so people on social media, they get some information. And when I say some, that's just it. They hear a piece of information and then they take it, and they may, maybe in this case, because they believe there was domestic violence, and you could immediately come to certain conclusions about what that means. And I would always caution anyone to make conclusions too soon without looking at all the other pieces of information. So at some point, Eric, when did I become involved in this case, and how? Because I feel like this is very, very far-fetched.
Yeah, so you became involved in the case 2 days ago.
Okay.
And mind you, this case has been ongoing since April 27th of 2024 when Mica Miller passed away. Now, let's go back and just kind of recap really quickly. And again, this happened in Robeson County, North Carolina. And as you mentioned, Dana, she called 911 to say, "Hey, look, I'm going to kill myself. Can you track my location so so the family can find me?" And the case was ruled as a suicide by the Robeson County, the North Carolina Medical Examiner's Office. And individuals in the community all over did not accept that cause of, that manner of death. So, of course, I got involved in the investigation, and just yesterday, I decided to go ahead and release my findings in the investigation, which my findings were undetermined, mainly because there were a lot of screw-ups. There was a lot of screw-ups in the investigation. I mean, there were screw-ups in the investigation from the sheriff's office side. I mean, there was no autopsy done in a suicide case. It's an unattended death, and there was no autopsy done. Now, yes, obviously, the cause of death appears to be a GSW, but you don't know trajectory until you open up the skull and start doing, all that stuff. Well, and trajectories really help determine whether or not something is self-inflicted versus a potential homicide. So there was a lot of screw-ups there, but on the same token, too, there was evidence that pointed to potential homicide. So because there was both, and because there was so much, and we talked before about tampering. I think I mentioned before, there was individuals in this case that had um, sent death threats, both written communication, verbal communication to witnesses. And these were witnesses who had either found the body, heard gunshot, things like that. They were accused of being involved with this giant conspiracy, to the point that they refused to talk with me during the investigation because they were afraid of getting death threats. It even got to the point where Mica Miller's husband, another private investigator in South Carolina, put a GPS on this guy's vehicle for no reason whatsoever. Mind you, he's not a suspect in any case. He wasn't arrested. He was never a person of interest in her death. He was cleared shortly after the homicide based on the sheriff's office reports, as well as the FBI CAS report, which familiar with CAS, the cell phone analysis, where they were able to determine his phone was not pinging anywhere near, this location. But a PI decided to put a tracker on this guy's vehicle and then was like feeding the information to people who were following him around and posting it on social media for likes and views. And, so that was all going on while we were trying to conduct our investigation. So, of course, once we realized like we weren't going to get any answers anywhere, and the fact that there was just too many discrepancies, we had to, determine it was undetermined, we kind of backed out. Well, that's when the conspiracy started. I mean, and there's been conspiracies around this case, since day one. And I think we've talked on podcasts before that, this happens a lot. I mean, this happens in a lot of cases, especially cases with domestic violence. And, we've talked that DV cases sometimes and more often than not can essentially be staged suicides. They're actually homicides that are staged like a suicide. But I think people start fixating on that because it happens. And they're like, well, if that happens once, it must happen all the time, even though it's not all the time. So people just started digging and just like tearing apart like every little piece of everything. And you know how people are. Like if you watch something 30 times, you're going to find something new every single time. Just like when I watch Better Call Saul, I've watched it probably 6 times from start to finish. I find something new in it every single time I watch. So if you listen to a phone call a million times or watch a video a million times, eventually you're going to make yourself believe something that isn't really there because you're trying to find an answer, but there isn't an answer to be found. And that's kind of how Dana got dragged into this, is that this 911 phone call from April 27th, people believe was AI generated. They believe that she was forced against her will to go into the woods and that somebody shot her, or it was somewhere else. And they just, somehow tricked 911 to believe the phone call happened here. And so they started digging through me, found Dana, and then listened to her voice on a video where she was talking about me and said, well, she sounds like the person from April 27th. And that's where the rumor started. And so people started posting comments, and I showed Dana posting comments saying that they believed that Dana was this mysterious person, that she was possibly the person behind this 911 phone call on April 27th, where this individual, Mica Miller, told police that she was going to go commit suicide. So essentially, they are accusing Dana of homicide, conspiracy to commit homicide, and God knows how many other federal and state crimes. And what's crazy is they think this is okay behavior because to them, well, we're just researchers. We're not investigators. We're just posting information. It's opinion. There is, and I think the biggest confusion is freedom of speech. They believe they have freedom of speech unlimited, not realizing that freedom of speech only applies to the government's restriction of your speech. You can't go around and accuse people of homicide and get away with it. So yeah, that's everything that's happened in a nutshell. I see Craig's face and he's just like, his head's going to explode.
Oh boy. Okay. So, all right, let's unpackage this. All right. False statement of material fact. Let's start with that. Okay. So opinion versus making a statement of fact. This is how the concept of defamation comes into play here. Now, this is a civil tort that I'm talking about. So let me break this down for the viewers so they understand the differences. Defamation is sort of an overarching construct. You have slander, and then you have libel that lie underneath these as legal theories. Slander speaks to words. It speaks to, somebody says something. They make a statement to a third party. Okay, they publish it out. They publish it to a third person, not the plaintiff, not the person who the false statement's being made about. They have to publish that to a third person. That's slander. Libel is written, and this includes media. So, for example, posts on social media, any sort of any writing, anything that is in written form that maintains a record. So, you post something on social media and it's there forever, essentially, right? Sure, it can be pulled or redacted down, but that record is still there. That's libel. Now, let's talk about what specific kind of tort this is. So we can break libel and slander down into different things as well. We can talk about, whether a person's a private individual versus a public figure and all that good stuff. Oh, okay. There's the posts right there. Okay. Yeah. And yeah, you're muted. I can't hear you. But yeah.
So there's one of them where the accused Dana. Let me. I don't want to put names.
And I see it's. Yeah, truth is. Make sure Heidi take part out. I want to leave names out.
So I'm gonna take a lot of names out, but truth is that this person's husband has known Dana Anderson, aka this mysterious voice, since the Heather Elvis case. I don't even know who that is, which was 11 years ago, and probably longer. She just pretended not to know him, and that's Mica Miller's husband, when she was looking for information on him from the likes of a content creator on social media.
And then I
also say that she wouldn't know what the truth is if it landed on her. And then they also say that here's something you don't know. That the person spotted at a restaurant on May 16th, 2024, 19 days after Mica Miller passed away, they believe it was Dana. And this is just the crap that they're posting online.
Yeah. So it's
yes, and then Dana has a picture of a white female with blonde hair that you can easily see, Craig, looks nothing like Dana whatsoever. Which is why we have this lovely, great screenshot that we'll post eventually of Dana's pretty mug. That looks nothing like the person in the photograph. But you know what? When you look at something a million times, you convince yourself.
Yeah.
I think we talked about delusions before in these cases.
Right. Well, and so, I'm going to speak more generally about this. So let's just say, again, a false statement of material facts. So this is important because when someone is publishing something out here on social media, when they're making a statement or an assertion, for it to be actionable under the law, it has to be false. At first, the statement has to be false, right? It has to be a statement of false fact, or, in fact, that is false. Makes sense. And it has to be published out to a third party or a sufficient number of people. The law really, one person may not be sufficient, but generally it has to be published out, right? In this case, social media goes out to, everyone. Essentially, everyone could have access to it. So that's all met. Now, here's where it's interesting. Accusations, specific types of accusations that you make, false statements of fact that you make about another person, things like accusing somebody of a crime, accusing somebody of having a loathsome disease like a sexually transmitted infection or an STI, those sorts of things, right? Making those kinds of assertions, damages are presumed, and we call it libel per se, or we call it slander per se, if depending on whether it's spoken or it's written. The key here is that as an attorney, I like libel per se and I like slander per se. Why do I like it? Because I don't have to prove damages. Damages are presumed because the conduct or those statements can be so damaging to someone's reputation that damages are presumed. They do not have to be pled and proven, essentially. Necessarily don't be proven because that's what per se means. And that's a key takeaway. That's an important thing I think people also need to understand about any type of, when you're making statements about, anything or about somebody else particularly, if those statements are untrue, if they're false, and they're false, right? And you utter those out, and particularly if these are, things like I just said, you could be suffering some significant civil liability for doing something like that. And I mean, there's been all sorts of legal cases. We can look at some of the bigger cases like the Johnny Depp Amber Heard case, I think involved those allegations and cross allegations and such and all that kind of stuff. And so it's, depending on who's involved and, again, what's being said or, the statements in terms of what they're saying, if they do significant damage, those defendants are going to be on the hook for.
And now, I want to ask too, like, say for example, you're a business owner and they're defaming your business, my business, whatever it may be. Don't the courts typically, I don't want to say side with businesses more often, but don't they usually offer more protection to businesses just because of the nature of it's your livelihood, there's a lot behind it. And, when people intentionally damage a business, don't the courts usually tend to kind of side with the businesses just because of the nature of having, the stress from running a business?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question because that also falls under, again, libel per se and slander per se. So if you are defaming a business enterprise with false statements, for example, you say something about the purity of, say you're a food manufacturer or something, and you make some false allegations about, that this manufacturer is intentionally, altering or adulterating this food, and you're publishing this out to a number of people, and now and you have enough status to where you're an influencer, and now you have caused damage to that business. Guess what? They're probably coming after you, and they're going to sue you for libel per se, because again, damages are presumed if you damage someone's business reputation and you attack their profession. So this is also a professional. This also includes like professionals such as, I don't know, psychologists and doctors and attorneys and other like professionals, making those statements, again, that are false. Damages are presumed generally in this case. And, remember, everybody has a right to, an opportunity to be heard. They have a right to their day in court. So it's like, you can make allegations. You can say, I've been slandered, or, somebody has libeled me, has committed libel. You still have to prove that in court, right? You still have to prove the elements of that, I should say. But then damages also have to be proven, unless you have these carve outs in the law that essentially give the plaintiff the presumption that the person is damaged. In other words, they don't have to specifically prove that. That makes sense.
Now here's a tricky one. And, this is a question I get a lot. And I think that people think if they're in a different country, let's say for the UK, for example, that they have just free will to do whatever they want because they're in a different country and you can't touch them. Is that necessarily true?
Well, that's where it gets tricky because, again, if they're defaming somebody, say, and again, across the pond, because you're talking about somebody that's in a different country, there's an issue of jurisdiction, right? That comes into play in terms of like, where are you going to file suit? So the attorney would have to look at this, because you've got the defendant is in one country, the plaintiff is in another country. Where is the damage happening? In other words, what's the appropriate venue in jurisdiction, kind of, or somewhat related, but generally what the way you look at it is, well, it's if the plaintiff is suffering damages in their country of where they're currently at, then they can generally bring a legal action in that jurisdiction, in whatever, say, wherever they were at. In other words, wherever the act occurred. Now, again, the defense could argue what? They could say, well, no, the act occurred in Great Britain, for example, and so you don't have jurisdiction to bring my client into court, and you have to bring the action in this jurisdiction, under British law, for example. And British law, although shares a lot of similarity with, American common law jurisprudence, there are some differences.
You'd have to wear a wig.
Well, yeah, they got to wear those wigs over there, which, like, I am not putting on one of those things.
You would have to if you're my attorney.
I'm not putting a wig on, so that's the end of that one, because that's just, I don't get it. Okay,
Craig's like, no. The dress is fine. The wig is no.
Yeah, I'll wear a robe. You want me to be a judge? I'll be a judge. I'll put a robe on.
The robe is fine.
get that
Well,
gavel
I
on
guess
and
you would
boom,
you
and
you couldn't be
yeah,
a judge in Canada either, because don't the judges in Canada wear wigs as
I
well?
think they do because they follow the crown. So the crown court.
Parliamentary law? Yeah.
Yes, it's the crown. So they call it the crown. When you go
Yeah,
into the crown court,
I'm calling them out. Someone was bald, and at some point they're like, everybody wears wigs now.
put on the fancy wig while you're in the courtroom.
Everyone has hair. So,
Reminds me of what's that movie?
Yeah, going back to jurisdiction, that gets tricky, Eric. It's not as easy as people think. Now, you know what? Like, if generally it's where the plaintiff's there, they'll get a lawyer in their jurisdiction, their county, their city, or whatever. They'll probably file it in if it's a state claim, they'll file it in state court. If they can find some federal question, which, federal jurisdiction would maybe apply if it's a constitutional issue, which this wouldn't be, because these are private citizens that are doing these actions. So constitutional questions often, involve government actors, because as you pointed out, the private citizens can't necessarily violate your Fifth Amendment rights. That's only, government act, unless you colluded with, or,
Unless you're an agent of the
if you were an
government.
agent, if you were deemed an agent of, say, a law enforcement actor, who said, hey, I want you to do this kind of, I want you to try to get a confession out of this guy. You're a private citizen. Well, no, guess what? You've kind of been deputized for the purposes of that. And then the Fifth Amendment privilege would attach, and you wouldn't be able to sneak that in. But going back to the jurisdiction stuff, there's fights over that kind of stuff all the time about, like, well, where are we going to hear this?
But the moral of the story is you're not untouchable. It's just more difficult than
it's a lot more difficult. Now you go into some, for example, Russia. Here's a great example. You got your defendants in Russia. Good luck, because
good luck.
Yeah, you're not going to be able. There's not going to be any cooperation between those courts to be able to bring somebody from a country like that over to the United States to be able to have them held liable. So if you remember, Prince Andrew, remember the all the litigation involving the Jeffrey Epstein case? That's a good example of where guess what happened with Prince Andrew? He got sued. By that victim that was trafficked by Jeffrey Epstein. If you remember, they allegedly flew her over to, the palace and all that stuff, or they went out partying, but all that stuff happened. And, she filed suit. That victim is in the United States, and they got, let's put it this way. They settled the matter out of court for an undisclosed amount of money, but so it can be done. It can definitely be done.
And it sounds like, from what you're saying too, that influencers are technically held to a higher standard, really.
Well,
because they reach a broader range of people, so their actions are more damaging.
Yes. So in terms of scope of damages, because that's the plaintiff's lawyer is certainly going to raise that. It's going to bring say something like this ever went to a jury trial. The fact that this person maybe has a following of 1 million viewers, or they have a substantial number of people following, and they have the ability to influence a lot of people, you are looking at a lot more liability potentially in terms of damages, because again, the scope of that damage is going to be greater. So all of that is obviously looked at.
And if they're monetizing their channel, does that make a difference?
I don't know if monetization would change that, other than it potentially would there's just more opportunity for the material to be viewed by other people, right? So remember, it's like, publication is you have to prove that that, okay, did this person actually publish this, right? Meaning publish, did they transmit it out to a sufficient number of people other than the plaintiff? And that's easy to prove. Obviously, if someone posts something on social media, at least, it's presumed other people are reading it, especially if you're getting comments or responses to that, right? Like, people are commenting in the chain.
And continuing,
or, for example,
the damage.
You get someone that's, that's reposting or tweeting, as we used to call it. So that can just, all that does is...
What's it called? What's it called now? Reexing? I don't know.
Reexing, I guess. I don't know, because, Elon decided that he wanted to call it X. Like, I think that was a little, I don't know why he did that, but that was...
Chapter's X.
Okay,
Yeah,
maybe. Yeah. I think he just said, you know what? I don't like Twitter because, that's why he fired half the, Twitter staff when he took over. He's like, we're changing the
and
name.
now it sucks even worse.
We're changing the name.
So this person did a switch with one of my posts on TikTok, but then brought it into a live stream. So host a live stream a couple of
Using
weeks ago
you,
using my information that I posted. So again, what I had posted was it's a picture of me on Eric Zelaya's website.
which I want to interject. That picture is my company's property. We own the rights to all that stuff, the
Yeah,
cartoon
intellectual
images of
property.
Dana. Yep. And so they shared intellectual property that I gave Dana permission to share commercially, but they shared it for their own commercial purposes
Gain,
without
yeah.
my permission.
If they didn't have your permission, yeah, you potentially have a cause of action there against this person. Boy, there's
But
all kinds of things you can do here.
what was concerning is because someone did attend the live stream, not me, but they shared some of this videos. And probably the most concerning aspect is some of the people weighing in, just like saying how disgusting I am to be this person posing as, I guess, a forensic psychologist or being this murderer. But basically, like, we have to call the FBI. Like, how could she do this? I'm a criminal. And I
Let
am,
me tell you a story.
yeah, go.
They have sent tips to the FBI so many times. It's not funny. They think that the FBI is their personal tip line. And when I would say, and again, I've told you about people that are reviewing, again, everything they're reviewing is already known to the public.
Uh-huh.
If they have it, law enforcement already had it. But they're reviewing stuff and sending it to the FBI anyways. And they think, and we've talked about this before about how these people think that they're solving these cases, that they're going to be able to solve the case. That is not how, not how cases get solved.
No. Yeah, I mean, this is, again, this could also, I don't know who these people are, but we look at people that do these kinds of things, and it's like, what's the internal drive or the internal need to, like, intertwine themselves into this stuff and then start making, false accusations and things like that? Are they trying to, like, advance their own are they trying to, like, play into the dramas and make things, bring in more drama, right, to a situation? And we all know that personality pathology can, like, drive a lot of this kind of stuff where people, they feed off of this stuff. They love it. They want to create drama. Because they're looking for reactions, right? They want to see other people, react and get angry, and how this stuff goes. And who knows what's the motive here? Like, why are they, this almost sounds like this is some kind of delusional, like, like all of a sudden we've got someone with some mental health stuff going on, right? Like, how they, like, all, people with persecutory delusions, think, they see a likeness, right, of someone. They're like, oh my God, this is the person that did this, right? And all of a sudden now they've internalized this as this, and now this fixed delusion is like, nah, it's here and it's here to stay. And then all it does is grow, right? It just gets more profoundly, like, distorted.
Dr. Dana is not the only one that's been accused of being a mysterious person.
You are not the chosen Dr. Dana.
Dr. Dana's new friend, Dr. Leslie, was also accused of being a mysterious person. So another forensic psychologist was also accused of being a mysterious person. They have accused a bunch of people. When one person doesn't stick, they move on to somebody else.
And so they believe,
and then it's a never-ending cycle.
Yeah.
What do they believe Dr. Leslie's role is?
They believe that she was the mysterious voice as well. And then the other rumor was that me and Dr. Leslie together created this mysterious person.
And does Dr. Leslie look like Dr. Dana, or is there a resemblance to the victim in this case?
There's not a resemblance to anybody involved with this case.
Okay.
And what's crazy is, and the worst part about this is, this all stems from a Facebook or a TikTok profile, or TikTok profiles with, anonymous names. And these people feel like they are entitled to know who is behind these profiles. And I can tell you that during my investigation, I had a content creator call me and try to get me to tell them, because I know people behind some of these profiles. You know, somebody tried to get me to tell them, like, oh, just give me the last four of their phone number, or just, give me a first name. It's none of your business. It is nobody's business who is behind a fake profile. It doesn't matter what they're doing. It doesn't matter if they're posting BS to you. It doesn't matter. That is their right to have a fake profile if they want to have a fake profile. And it doesn't matter if you are a true crime content creator, a Scooby-Doo mystery machine. I don't care if you identify as a cucumber. You have no right to know who is behind anything. I think that's the issue, is that they feel entitled.
Yeah, because they're a true crime, sleuth, right? Like they've adopted this. They think they're out solving they're changing the world. They can do it better than the FBI or the local law enforcement.
I mean, everybody can do it better than me. I mean, I don't claim to be the best BI, so have at it. Fuck it. But it's just.
Oh, is the other psychologist aware of all these false allegations that have been made?
Yeah.
And is she retaining legal counsel? Here's the thing. Here's the other thing. I got to talk about this, right?
Craig's trying to draw a business.
Right. No, I mean,
class action lawsuit.
Practice law in one state. This is probably being heard by people.
What's it called when you have to when you get counsel in another state to cover for a case there?
You get a special counsel, like I forgot what they call it. It's a temper. You get a temporary.
I know the word, something pro vice.
Yes, it is. It's not pro se. It's oh my God, I have to look it up. But
pro vice.
Look it up. Somebody GPT it. You can go into other states for a limited purpose. Generally, you have to get the approval of the court jurisdiction and sometimes the local bar or the state bar. But ProHawk.
Yeah, ProHawk. I think it's ProHawk.
ProHawk. Look it up.
Yeah.
Do we even know?
Yeah, ProHawk Vice for this time only.
Thank you. So, I mean, it was somewhere. I couldn't remember. ProHawk. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I knew the word. It was just
there was all. Yeah. Anyway, but so remember this. Okay, so this is what most attorneys do. This. Okay, so what's the most important thing they're going to look at when you come to them with a case like this, and you go, this person has posted all these false statements. This is absolutely libel per se. I looked it up. It's got what kind of resources does this defendant have? In other words, are we going after a deep pocket, or is this some like semi-homeless like person who has no assets, no resources, nothing there? And so if they don't, then well, sure. I mean, some people do it for the purpose of
shits and giggles.
But again, they do it because they want to clear. Maybe they want it on the
vexatious litigants.
Yes, they were like,
I know fancy words.
That this person was found liable for, they were liable for libel. And
I read a dictionary once.
Yeah. So, but then you're not going to recover a penny, and lawyers are not cheap. Some lawyers are charged. They charge they charge more than a forensic psychologist charges for the most part. $500 an hour or something. Some of them are a lot more than that. So it's kind of expensive to litigate. I mean, it's like, you got to file suit. You got to file the loss. First, you got to figure out who the defendant is, right? In this case, I don't know if this person's hiding behind a fake pro.
No, luckily we know. Luckily, the content creators are well known. Like that's.
They post
and that's
streaming. It's public. They have.
Okay. Well, then, yeah. So, assuming that you have them properly identified, so we know who they are, they're a real person, then we got to figure out, then you got to hire Eric to track them down as far as where they live, because then we got to get them served properly. We got to follow.
Easy enough. They called me. You got the phone number.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Reverse. People don't realize that,
Yeah, exactly.
Wait a second.
So,
why are they calling you? Can we talk about that phone call?
So initially they had called me. Because they had asked, like, hey, do you know this mysterious profile? And I'm like, well, I know who the person is behind it. I'm friends with them. I said, but, it's not anybody's business who they are. And like, well, uh, they said some mean things about me. I'm like, okay, I'm sorry. Like that's not my problem. Like people say mean shit all the time. Like I'm not going to give you their information because it's a mean shit about you on social media. So after that point, I started getting weird website hits from where this person lives at. So I knew what was going on because I remember, and people are going to hate me because I always say this. I always say this. I live my life under this saying: it's chess, it ain't checkers. So everything I do, I'm always 2 steps ahead of whoever I'm talking because I don't trust people at all, especially being a PI, being on social media. People use you for your information. They use you for your connection. So when somebody calls me up and says, hey, look, can you contact this person? Red flags are going off. So the next morning I get a phone call or I get a text message saying, hey, do you know Dana Anderson? I'm like, of course I know Dana. She's a consultant for my firm and I do podcasts with her and we work together and we shoot the shit. Like, of course I know she is. Then I went to TikTok and saw a video posted. And this person was like, oh, I want to bring her on my podcast as a guest, my very first guest. This person's been on TikTok for 5 years. Okay. Your very first guest, you wanted to be Dana. No offense, Dana, but you know what I'm saying, right? Like out of nowhere, out of nowhere. Now, mind you, I already knew from the very first moment that I got that phone call or that text like, hey, do you know Dana? I knew what was happening because I'm like, something doesn't seem right. I'm like, all of a sudden, like, why are they so focused on Dana? And then I started seeing posts about, oh, the voice sounds familiar. I'm like, I knew it. They're trying to think that they're trying to like identify voices and are digging into everybody, you know? So I played along with it for a little bit. We were going to invite them on the show. We were going to let them talk about their theories.
Oh, that would have been a lot of fun.
That was the plan.
What
There
happened?
was a plan.
They decided.
So what happened was they told their entire followers that they are the director, not me, and that they knew right from the beginning that me and Dana were in this
You were
together.
in, yeah, you were in cahoots.
Yeah. Oh, we were in cahoots, and that they caught on to our game. Yeah, checkmate, baby.
And then you sent an email, Eric.
I did. I sent a text message.
Or text, okay.
Yeah, sent a text message. Which I don't think we have to read all of it. I mean, I'll go through. I'll go through some. Let me see if I can find some good parts of it. That really point out, the issues that were uncovered. And you have to remember, again, I'm a business. Dana, whether she likes it or not, is now a part of that business. She doesn't get paid. But she's, but she's a part of that business. And because she's a part of that business, she gets those same protections that I would get because it is part of my business.
Oh, I'm liking
And
this. I like being part of this now. Thank you.
But people, I think, on social media don't realize that businesses have these protections that you, as just a content creator, you don't have free reign to just say whatever you want to say and just like go after businesses. They think, oh, you're just a person on TikTok. No, dude, I'm a business. Like, I am my own brand. It's Eric Z Private Eye. I own that brand.
And guess what, bro? I'm a business too, and I got like 3 million coverage, and I'm set up. If I go to court, you want to sue me, I'm paid to go. Like, I'm covered. I have a big policy because I'm involved in a lot of things that are quite litigious.
Yeah.
And
we all have insurance for that reason.
I am covered because the reality is this: we deal with people that have a lot of disturbed thinking.
Yes, and make false allegations all the time, or make claims that are, just completely
and it's
patently
not
false.
Uncommon that people have put me in their delusions. In the places I've worked, from the psychiatric patients, I've been involved in a lot of their delusions. The craziest delusions you can think of. I mean, look, I've been a part of that. I just really never want to be the main character. You know what I'm saying? And
have you ever been accused of homicide before that?
I think that's true. Yeah. So, in the psych hospital, there was a lot of strange things, but we usually try to medicate them and they'd sort of get out of it. But I certainly had a lot of people hold different delusions. And honestly, so I get messages from people who get out of jail or people I've evaluated and they're psychotic or out of the psych hospital. So they find me and message me, and it's absolutely psychotic and delusional and even threatening. I think I shared with Craig some message coming in is quite vulgar, a court-appointed eval on someone who actually I diagnosed with delusional disorder, amongst other things. So they actually can be quite dangerous because they'll start to believe there's some conspiracy and I was part of the court system to get their kid removed, or part of the reason they went to jail or prison and so on. And it could be absolutely false and unrelated, or me not even to be involved in their case. But what I'm saying is the threat is still real. And as a forensic psychologist, I am involved in people's delusions. I mean, they are involving me. And so my job is to protect myself because in the end, people do get murdered. And it's so these comments, these other followers may act on something.
Yeah, that's the danger, is that, you get somebody else who's unhinged, who is impulsive, who is antisocial, and is following this person, and then they get it in their head, okay, I'm going to go take care of this, right? And that's the problem, is that you get those kinds of people who we know are dangerous, and we know there's lots of those folks walking around, our streets, because we seem to have trouble figuring out who the real dangerous people are and getting those people locked up, and locking up people that probably don't really need to be locked up, that aren't really actually that dangerous. And that's a big problem for sure. So,
and a lot of these people that act out on stuff, they believe they're acting like they are the hand of God.
Of course they are.
They believe what they're doing is justified, and that's the scary part. So I am armed in my house. Like, I have definitely a lot of different protective measures, because that is the reality of doing this line of work, that there's at some point, someday, someone may come after you this way.
Yeah. So
I'm so chill half the time that if they broke in, I just light up a joint, give them a joint, and we all just smoke on the couch. I don't.
Yeah. Well,
I don't want to get up and do nothing.
That can be helpful too, but yeah, you don't want to get too lit so that you're not able to pull a trigger. You get a home invasion or something, and then you want to be able to take care of business, right? Hey, so those that worked in prisons before, Eric has, you've worked in the prisons, right? Yeah. What do the inmates like to do, Eric? Do they like to sue people?
They love to sue people.
They love to sue people
so much that we had to have a disciplinary rule against making false lawsuits.
Correct. But guess what? Come over to California. That doesn't happen.
Oh yeah,
those
I know.
Those inmates have free reign, and I've been sued. Now I've had false accusations made, right? Again, false claims, lawsuits, all that stuff. In fact, if I wanted to, if I had the time, I would have actually just filed suit against this one inmate that made a false, a claim against myself and a couple of other doctors, that, turned into a lawsuit that inmate filed, because, well, they make all the, they get to file those lawsuits for free in the federal courts. They're all free.
Yeah, because they're indigent, and
they're indigent, they get it all free, man. And so, this is a word to those that want to go work in corrections. Get ready.
Don't get me wrong. There are some good lawsuits. I have.
I'm not disputing that.
Eighth Amendment violation lawsuits.
I get it. And those ones.
But there are some frivolous ones.
Those are legit, and I'm not saying that there isn't merit to some of these, but a lot of these suits are just frivolous. They are malicious. And by the way, you make a false civil claim against somebody. Oh, yes.
Did you watch it, Dana? Did you watch it earlier?
Nutter butter. Eric.
Well,
we need to send Craig down the Nutter Butter TikTok rabbit hole.
It won't take long for him to get lost.
They're marketing. Yeah. They market to people, to 90s kids, because
I'm sure they do. Yes, I know.
Yeah, we all smoke
I'm sure they
do mushrooms and everything
else.
Mind.
also just know this, you can't just also make false civil claims against people, because guess what? If you do that intentionally and you know that your claim is false, in other words, you make up false stuff, you are going to get sued for malicious institution of civil proceedings. And that is a civil tort that I am intimately familiar with. And I will fire back and will file suit against anybody who makes false claims like that.
Mistaken too, if you misuse the court system or too many frivolous
Correct.
lawsuits, don't you get labeled a vexatious litigant?
Yes, you do, but like I said, the courts could have sanctions that they can also impose. But as litigator, as an attorney, like that is a tort that that can be filed against an excessively litigious plaintiff who is filing these frivolous lawsuits that have no merit whatsoever. There's negligent, and then there's intentional or malicious institution. But the malicious one is the one that you go after because you get punitive damages for that. And punies are where they're at.
Punies.
Craig,
Well, I've learned a lot today.
yeah, I'm honored to have your representation. So,
well, remember, you have waived privilege for the purposes of discussing this case today, right? Like,
remember, Danny, you're innocent until proven guilty. You'll have to retain a criminal defense investigator as well.
Yeah,
I know a good one.
I think I'm in good hands. So did we answer the question today? Am I a killer?
Well, unless you can like duplicate yourself, like have you been able to clone yourself yet? Like, so you could get over to South Carolina? No, the answer is no. Unless, am I familiar? Am I missing something regarding cloning technology? Is it? And I think.
While we're on this topic, let me talk about projection for a second, because I just thought about this. So while we were discussing this on TikTok and like trying to like say this is just ridiculous, we got accused of being insensitive to Mica Miller's case because they thought we were making fun of people believing that Dana was a mysterious person. Don't you think that's projection? And is not these false accusations just as harmful and as mocking to a deceased person?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And they're distracting too, because it's like you're taking the focus away from the actual case, right? I mean, so yeah, it's even probably more damaging to do this kind of stuff.
Yeah, and if this is truly in fact a suicide, as I believe it was ruled, and that's something I take serious. And we, the way we talk about victims after they've ended their life, like I don't feel like publicly I have a right to say disparaging things. Like I want to bring awareness so people don't ever have to feel that that's the only option they have. And the reasons that people may make that choice are complicated and not always well understood by other people. I personally have had several members of my family die by suicide, and the reasons are complicated and hard to understand. And it's very horrific, the aftermath of that, to try to pick up the pieces and make sense. And with Mica Miller and her husband, they had also issues between them of domestic violence. Like people make a lot of presumptions about what domestic violence is and what it means. And it doesn't, and someone could choose to end their life because of domestic violence. Like we don't always want to assume like homicide. And so this is one of the things that we do as investigating cases is understanding someone's motives and information about their mental health leading up to their death, right? We did another episode called Secrets Behind a Staged Suicide.
Wow.
And that's a different case where we believe there was foul play and that it wasn't that somebody took their own life. And but we, in that case, that we got the autopsy, right? The toxicology screen. We got all that information. We did an episode on that. And we'll do another one with the family that I've been working with. They have an update. So I think it's always important to be reverent to people involved in these cases. And just like this true crime community that's doing this to me, like they're Like, they don't have a right to do that. Just throwing people's names, like accusing me of something, like a husband in this case who's moved on. There's children. Isn't he remarried? He has a life. He's been.
No, he's not remarried. I don't think they didn't have any children either. It was just him.
No, I thought there was some child. Was there any children?
Oh, sorry, he does have children, but they're older. He has older children. Oh, that's great. But that's great because it shows that you don't have any fucking idea about this goddamn case.
Yeah. Well,
Oh, yeah. Heidi, bleep that out.
I have other things to do, real cases, and I'm not retained on, like, I'm not in this case. But what I'm saying is the family and other people involved, when they hear about it, like, that is their livelihood, where they work, where they go to school, his job, like people coming to his house, stalking him, videotaping him, surveillancing him. Like, people cross that line and they're now harassing, stalking.
Yep. There's been restraining orders dropped. There's been letters of intent sent out. I mean, it's gotten crazy. I mean, people are getting slapped. There was an individual, a paralegal, who took it upon themselves to go onto social media and accuse this guy, this Mica Miller's former husband, of murder. Remember, he was never arrested, was never a suspect, is not a suspect. There's rumor of an FBI investigation, but nobody's been able to verify that whatsoever. People have claimed that they were interviewed by the FBI, but again, nobody's been able to verify that independently. And typically in investigations, Craig, you and I know this, typically witnesses don't go to content creators and say, hey, look, I just got interviewed by the FBI. Want to know what I told them? I've never seen that in 13 years of doing investigations. But besides the point, what was I saying? I just lost my train of thought. It was so good too.
I mean, I think
so good.
The key takeaway is that there are consequences when people make false, accusations, especially when we're talking about things like you're accusing somebody of committing a very serious crime, like murder. That is, that can lead.
This paralegal got sued. She got slapped with a lawsuit. She lost her job at the law firm.
and there will be there can be consequences, and serious ones. Like, you're right. You get a judgment levied against you with, in a libel case like this, it could be in the millions of dollars, and, they're coming after you for, collecting on that judgment. And that's going to follow a defendant. It can follow a defendant, and really, really mess them up, their life up. So, there are consequences. And you don't want to be the subject of, of a libel lawsuit that, you end up, now you got to defend it. You got to defend yourself. You're going to have to find legal counsel to defend yourself. And that's not cheap. You're not getting a public defender for that, by the way, because that's a civil case. So the state isn't giving you a free lawyer. Okay?
Nope, it's all on you. I mean, you make
better
bad
believe
decisions.
it. And you want to go pro per, go for it. And see if you can defend yourself and see what happens.
And that's, and the thing I tell people about this is I'm all for the support of the true crime community. I'm all for people advocating for issues that come up. I'm all for them spreading, to get the word out about a case. But leave the investigation to the professionals. There are private investigators. There are others that are professionals. My favorite saying in the true crime community, as raunchy as it sounds, is do not put your fingers where your fingers do not belong.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, don't practice medicine without a license and be doing those problems.
Exactly. Do not practice medicine without a license in the true crime community. Plain and simple.
Excellent
That's all
way
I got, guys.
Excellent way to end it.
Well,
perfect.
Thank you. I think you guys solved the mystery.
You're not a killer.
Thanks for listening to Killer Psychologist, and thank you to Craig for signing up to be my attorney, Eric too, that's signed up to be doing defense work for me in the future. And you can weigh in on and comment on social media and on YouTube what you think about this case. Guilty, not guilty? What are your thoughts? And we'll see you on social. Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening. For episode details and merch, check out killerpsychologistpodcast.com. And for forensic services, you can book online at psychologydr.com. That's psychologydoctor.com.